Hey Guardians, I just want to let everyone know that I do have both a Twitch and a Twitter, and I'm very active on both. Feel free to come give me a follow on both, links in the description. Alright Guardians, it's time to talk about Fatebringer. First things first, I did make a change to my channel that we'll talk about at the end of the video, so please stick around for that. But as you all probably know, the Vault of Glass weapons got a rework this season, and they're now craftable as well, and after a few very long farming sessions that had me completely losing my mind. I'm loading in, by the way, Lodge. And by in, I mean I am inside Atheon currently, at this moment.
You're in Atheon? That's crazy.
I'm inside Atheon.
Why are you inside Atheon?
Because Elsie Bray rejected me.
So because Elsie rejected you, you just went whole hog on the robot thing, huh?
Yeah.
Damn.
Man, pull down.
You're not supposed to fist the robot. Just remember that.
Over here looking at Atheon like,
blank.
you're next. I got all but a couple craftable, and all of these weapons, or nearly all of them, are actually pretty damn good, and Fatebringer is no exception. There's great roles here for PvP and for PvE, and with this being a PvP channel, we are, of course, going to start with PvP. So jumping right into it, starting with your stat perks, Fatebringer is kind of a stat monster. At base, you have 46 range, 57 stability, and 55 handling, with 10 AE and 84 aim assist. And there's plenty that you can do with this weapon, but personally I went for fluted barrel, accurized rounds, and a ranged masterwork with a ballistics mod. That gives you 72 range, 68 stability, and 70 handling. Great overall stats. Of course, there's plenty of other routes you could go, such as if you're not worried about handling as much, go for hammerforged rifling for 82 range, or you could go with small bore for 79 range and 70 stability. Keep in mind, when you enhance the perks on this weapon, that will help it further as well. I went with the original role I mentioned because I like to min-max range, stability, and handling as much as possible, but there are plenty of different ways you could go here. And keep in mind, you can get the time loss versions of these weapons on master difficulty and then throw adept mods on them. For me, this really just wasn't worth it because at this point, the ballistics mod is just locked in for me on most primaries, but you do have that option too. Now, moving right into roles here, you can see the perk pool on your screen now, and there's plenty of good options for PvP here. In that third column, you have opening shot, keep away, rewind rounds, we'll talk about that later, to the pain, and explosive payload if you're a scumbag. Then in that last column, if you can take advantage of it, you do have frenzy, then you have Eye of the Storm, mag howl, and precision instrument. Now, talking a general purpose dueling role here, and keep in mind when I talk about perks, it is under the assumption that you'll be enhancing them. In the third column, while opening shot and payload are nice, keep away is just locked in there for me. Plus 10 range and 35 reload speed and a boost to weapon accuracy as long as no one's within 15 meters of you is just too good to pass up. Then in the fourth column, Eye of the Storm or Precision Instrument. Eye of the Storm, for obvious reasons, enhance the perk, and when you take damage, you get a boost to stability, handling, and accuracy. It's been a long-time favorite of many PvP players for a reason. Then you have Precision Instrument, which is interesting on a 140. Now, it is not as influential here as on a 120. You will not be able to 3-tap through an overshield. It will not let you 2 crit and 1 body unless maybe your target is just very low resilience. So its main benefit really is it does help your range slightly. For the record, the role with fluted barrel, accurized rounds, and a ranged masterwork, a ballistics mod, and keep away without Precision Instrument reaches out to around 36 meters. With Precision Instrument, that goes up to 37 or so meters, which is already kind of crazy for a 140. And if you went with a different barrel, such as hammerforged or maybe rifled barrel, you could potentially stretch that out to 38, maybe even 39 meters. And a 140 reaching that far into 120 range is kind of wild. Now, moving on, if you want a role meant more for just slaying out, then in that last column, look no further than Mag Howl for a substantial damage boost. Now, the way Mag Howl works is you'll get 1 stack of Mag Howl per precision final blow before reloading. Meaning if you get 1 precision final blow and then reload, you'll get 1 stack of Mag Howl, which translates to that first shot having a very high damage boost. If you get 2 final blows, you get 2 stacks, so on and so forth. And the damage boost from Mag Howl is substantial, enough that with 1 stack you can 2 crit and 1 body, and with 2 stacks of Mag Howl, yes, you can 2-tap. Plus, Mag Howl will not deactivate if you stow the weapon, which is also nice. Now, while you could use this in a manner similar to Ace of Spades, really I think the main power fantasy from this perk is being able to lean into 2 taps, meaning you want to try and go as long as possible without reloading. So there are a couple ways you can do this, such as the passive reload on transversive steps will reload the weapon without proccing Mag Howl, or you could use holster mods and stow the weapon to reload it, and this also will not proc Mag Howl. But there's another kind of funny way on this gun, and that's with rewind rounds. Now, rewind rounds will partially refill your magazine when it's empty, and the number of rounds you get depends on how many crits you landed beforehand. So that is an option as well. Is this as good as the other options mentioned? Definitely not T-steps, but it might be better than holster mods since you likely want to save that holster slot for a special weapon. Now, let's answer the elephant in the room. Is this hand cannon a competitor to Rose? Well, yes and also no. It really just kind of depends. First off, as far as perks go, the main difference is Rose has Slide Shot and Fatebringer doesn't. And while Slide Shot only gives you its benefits for that first shot, it does also make it so you very rarely, if ever, have to reload the weapon manually. And this is nice if maybe you just need to get a few rounds on the weapon in an emergency, and it's also just kind of nice for the sake of convenience. On the flip side, with the stat rolls I mentioned before and Keep Away, Fatebringer can still reach comparable ranges and still have better overall stats, and it can reach those ranges consistently, unlike with Slide Shot and Opening Shot where they're only helping you on that first round. Plus, of course, Fatebringer also has Mag Howl, and Rose doesn't really have any real damage perks. But Rose is also a lightweight frame, which is a huge bonus purely due to the plus 20 mobility it gives you, which, while most valuable on Hunters, is still a huge benefit on Titan and Warlock, since obviously moving fast is always better than moving slow. And Rose can also roll with Vorpal, and given that super spam is annoying in 6s and supers can often just outright win matches in comp and trials, Vorpal is very helpful. So overall, I still think that Rose does edge out Fatebringer in potency slightly, but if Rose gets a nerf at some point, and I think that is very likely just due to how it's been the top pick over pretty much every other 140 in the game for so long, then Fatebringer likely moves up to being top dog, at least in the kinetic slot. So is Fatebringer worth the farm? Yes, it absolutely is. Even if you have a perfect Rose. If Rose gets nerfed, you'll be glad you have Fatebringer. Or for that matter, if you're in a match where you need a more rangy hand cannon and for whatever reason just don't want to swap to a 120, or maybe a match where something like Slide Shot just is not working out for you, then you'll still be glad you have a Fatebringer. My only real complaints about Fatebringer is I wish Opening Shot was in the last column, I wish Explosive Payload just didn't exist at all, and I do still wish it had Slide Shot in the third column. Plus, the weapon model is a little chunky. Outside of that though, I think this is a great hand cannon, A tier at least, and quite possibly S tier for what it is. Now, talking PvE, again, there's great rolls here too. Starting with that third column, you have Osmosis, which I'm not really a huge fan of, but it's there if you want it, then Rewind Rounds, Kinetic Tremors, and Explosive Payload. Then in the fourth column, Frenzy, Firefly, possibly Elemental Honing, and One for All. And then of course you have the intrinsic trait Time Lost Magazine, where final blows with this weapon give bonus super energy, which isn't bad in PvP, but is definitely more noticeable in PvE. And it also overloads the magazine after you use your super. This is just a really great intrinsic trait overall. Now, getting into perk combos, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Osmosis in general, and Kinetic Tremors for me just takes too long to proc on a hand cannon, so I would go with either Explosive Payload or Rewind Rounds. Then in that last column, Firefly or One for All. Now, for just general play here, really any combo would work, but for more endgame activities such as GMs where enemies tend to be a lot tankier, I would go with either Explosive Payload and Firefly, Explosive Payload and One for All, or Rewind Rounds and One for All. Firefly and Explosive Payload for obvious reasons. Explosive Payload does extra extra damage in PvE, and Firefly will make enemies explode on kill. Then Explosive Payload and One for All, again for obvious reasons, with One for All hitting 3 separate targets will give you a damage boost. Note that you don't have to get 3 kills, just hit 3 separate targets for a very free 35% damage boost. Then Rewind Rounds One for All for the same reason, but with the advantage of Rewind Rounds just helping you keep your mag topped off. I will also mention Elemental Honing here. This is a new perk and one that isn't really proven yet. But the way it works is unique elemental damage from any source will grant the weapon a stacking damage buff for 23 seconds and up to 5 stacks for damage. And this can be procced while the weapon is stowed. Now, according to D2 Foundry, you get a maximum of 5 stacks, I believe, per unique elemental damage dealt, and the way this works is a little weird. Your kinetic weapons gain a 10% buff for 1 stack, then 20% for 2 stacks, then 30%, then 35%, then 40%. And your elemental weapons gain 2.5% on 1 stack, then 10%, then 20%, then 30%, then 35%. Now, for obvious reasons, I do think this would be extremely potent on Prismatic, since you could have a different elemental type for your melee, grenade, and maybe your class ability dealing yet another type of damage as well. Then you could have your super with yet another different element type, then have a special and or heavy with different element types as well. You get the idea here. So I do think there's potential, but again, this is a new perk, so for sure give it a try, but don't necessarily make it your go-to just yet. So yes, there are great options here for PvE. If you have a perfect PvE Midnight Coup or something of the sort, do you really need this thing? In all reality, probably not. However, unlike Midnight Coup, keep in mind that Fatebringer is craftable, so you're not quite as at the mercy of RNG here. Just get your Vogue runs in or farm Templar next time Vogue is farmable, and once you get those 5 red borders, you're all set. No RNG hell, and having it craftable helps save vault space as well, which is just awesome. So Fatebringer is for sure a great PvP weapon and a great PvE weapon. Plus, Vault of Glass is an easy farm, and Fatebringer's a longtime Destiny classic, so get your hands on one. That is all from me today, Guardians. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then make sure you leave a like and comment what you're going for on Fatebringer, then hit that subscribe button with the bell icon. And if you really liked this video, then check the description for my other links, and as some of you may have noticed, tips are now an option on my videos. Now, I will never, ever try to pressure anyone to leave a tip. Times are tough and I get that, but my PC is around 7 years old and it's really starting to show its age, which is starting to make content creation difficult. So for that reason, I decided to activate tips. So if you're feeling extra generous, then there's that option as well. But for now, thank you all for watching, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace, Guardians.